Okay, Saint Juniper Sarah E. Ferrer, long name, or Junipero. How do they say Juniper? Sarah E. Ferrer is his full name. E. Ferrer. Da, 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 da. And what can we say? He was born in 1713 and he died in 1784. Okay, let's get this going here so I can. Yeah, 1713 to 1784. Okay. So you could say just as the United States was forming, at least in the eastern part of North America, okay, he was in the Spanish part. Of course, if you remember your history from high school and studying American history at this time of the before and after the American Revolution, only really the eastern coastline was colonized by the British. They have parts of what is now modern day Canada as well, but most of the West was under the control or the colonization of the Spanish monarchy, Spain, the country of Spain or the Kingdom of Spain, and later France would also have large portion. Anyways, so 1784. He was Spanish. He was from Spain, and he was sent actually from the island, this little island, which I actually visited once. I took a vacation there called Mallorca. Will you ever go to Mallorca? Or hear of Mallorca? No? Well, maybe as you grow up, which is an island just off the eastern coast of Spain. Very pretty island, I think. You can go on Google Maps and see it. And that's where he's from. He was born, I guess, born and raised there. And he came from Mallorca to Mexico in 1749. So 1749, came over because it was part of the Spanish Empire at the time. It had been colonized by the Spanish, taken over by the Spanish. And so he went over there to bring the faith, went over to Mexico. He was a missionary. And he began his ministry in what is now California. So that's the American connection. It wasn't part of America already. It would later become in the 1800s part of America. But close enough, Mr. Guzman. You know what I'm saying? Close enough. It's not part of Mexico anymore or the Spanish Empire. So it's part of our country. So I'll say he's an American. Grandfathered in his walker. So he spent most of his ministry and his life going up and down the coast of California, establishing missions, which were, basically settlements for Christians to live in for a number of reasons. One reason was because, I don't know what it is about Christians, but people never like us. For some reason, people just don't like, it's not like live and let live. You got to worship the gods of the tribe. So if any of the Native Americans of the various tribes and groups became Christian, they would be persecuted, kicked out of their tribes, maybe killed, whatever. So he wanted a safe space for the Christian Native Americans to live. And also, hello, Ms. Don't tell me. No, go on. No, go. Please sit down. La da da da. Abraham Bellamere?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Lord. Slowly but surely, slowly. But I'm still next to Miss Peralty. What's the first letter of your last name? Miss Robbins? Really? I'm sorry, Ms. Robbins. Just for some reason, another person's face got stuck in my brain. Sorry about that. It'll come eventually. It's coming slowly. Anywho, so yeah, you could also use these missions as bases of operations, like rest stops, if you will, as he's going up and down the big, long coast of California, preaching the gospel, visiting people and stuff like that, bringing them the sacraments. But another reason for the missions and also, getting the Native Americans into them was to keep them away from the Spanish, which Father Serra was one. And he wasn't necessarily impressed by the moral example given by the Spanish settlers and soldiers who had been sent along with the Spanish Empire, or had brought the Spanish Empire to the Native Americans. um, and their abusiveness. So he wanted that also as a protection, so that they could live as Christians, because the Christians weren't living like Christians, the real Christians who would come over. But these new Christians wanted to live like Christians. So that's another reason for the missions. The missions are still, the mission system is still very debatable. If you're Native American, you hate it. It's boom missions. This is a form of cultural genocide and cultural oppression. They didn't treat us very nicely in the missions, which is, I'm not saying that's not true. I mean, I don't think any Europeans, even saintly ones, necessarily looked on the natives as their equals. Certainly not in civilization. So yeah, I'm not going to deny prejudice and stuff like that, or that Indians might have been maltreated, but that wasn't the primary purpose. I don't think that was the primary purpose. Those who would defend the missions would point out, well, that's not why they set them up. There was a reason why the Indians were flocking to the missions, mainly because a lot of times their own tribesmen wanted to kill them for being Christian, and they didn't want to be like enslaved by the other Spaniards. So go to the friars, go to the priests. At least they won't enslave us. Might make us carry water and cut wood, but we won't be slaves like we will if we stay out. Anyways, so let's see. Yeah, he suffered from when he went to California, arrived in California to begin his ministry. He was already in his mid-50s. So he wasn't, he wasn't a spring chicken. He also suffered from asthma. And this is the time, any of you who have asthma before, there's nothing you could take back then. There was no pump or anything that you could, suck on to open up his airways. You had to suffer with it back then. They didn't have that technology. So imagine that, on a donkey or something, riding hours and hours and hours on, these trail. I mean, there were no roads, so make your own trail basically up and down mountains and stuff, mountainous territory and stuff like that, with asthma. And he also developed an ulcer in his leg, which, as you know, an ulcer is like, a wound that won't heal, that's always pus and blood and stuff is always oozing out. So that came from somewhere. I don't know what condition that was, but he had it in his leg for the rest of his life. So again, he's walking, sometimes riding, but walking as well on an ulcerated leg. Imagine doing that, hundreds and hundreds of miles up and down, visiting these missions in California. That's dedication. He died at, oh no, is that? Yeah, he died at the age of 1784. He was 70 years old. He got tuberculosis, which I know the name. I always forget what kind of, it has something to do with the lungs, doesn't it? Tuberculosis. Okay. But anyways, he got tuberculosis, and that's what eventually killed him. He was a friar. He was a member of the Franciscan order. That's why, their habit is brown. That's just the color they chose. It could also be gray. Some Franciscans wear gray. But, he's not a monk or anything. Friars are different than monks. Monks are attached to a monastery where they all live under a leader, an abbot. Abbot is Diaz-Lazo, yes. Not like Abbott and Costello, who's on first. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Friars are different. They're kind of like monks, but they're like liberated monks. They're allowed to go out and move around. They have a lot more movement possibility than monks. Monks usually stay in the monastery praying to God for their whole life. The same thing with nuns and convents. But sisters and friars are more. They're a development within that monastic movement of more mobile religious, say, monks, if you will. So sometimes people, conflate and confuse friars with monks. They're not exactly the same thing. But he was a friar, and said why he was able to go to Mexico and California in the first place. He wasn't just established in any sort of monastery. I don't know if this is what he really looked like. I don't know if we have any actual pictures of him, paintings. But this is someone's conception of what he might have looked like. So, okay, fine. He was a Franciscan, an order founded by a man. We'll come across as Franciscans again, other saints. Founded by a man named St. Francis, who was an Italian man. St. Francis from the city of Assisi in northern Italy, who founded a religious group of friars around him and his ideas. And so they're called the Franciscans. He didn't call his group that. His group is called technically the Order of Friars Minor, the Order of the Lesser Brothers, to show their humility. You know how humble that is when you put it in the title of your group, but we're the more humble ones, right? Screw you, Dominicans. Jesuits, kiss my butt, my Franciscan butt. Anyways, the Lesser Brothers, the Friars Minor, okay? So he was beatified, declared blessed in 1988, and then was made a saint in 2015. So that necessarily leads to ask, I'm sure, Ms. Diaz-Lazo, is, what does that mean? Well, there are stages to becoming a saint, or being declared. It's like getting into the Hall of Fame, you need the votes. First of all, you have to have been a great player. If you weren't a holy, righteous person, if you were a bad person, well, right there, no one's going to recommend you for sainthood. You have to have been, you have to have had the stats, right, Mr. Hinkle? And then you can officially recognize someone. So that doesn't mean that just because someone doesn't have venerable or blessed or saint or whatever in front of his or her name, doesn't mean that person wasn't a saint. The person might have been an unrecognized saint, okay? You don't know. You might have known in your own life very holy people. These are just recognized people. Hall of Fame, you might say. Well, it starts out, you recognize their heroic virtue, that they practiced good deeds and did good things in all circumstances, even when it was difficult. So the first stage, first of all, you want to open up their life and examine their writings, their history, to see if they were legit. They weren't phonies. They were really living a good life. They weren't just someone that everyone thought was holy and good, but, there are a lot of skeletons in the closet that people didn't know about. No, so you do an investigation. And at that point, you can call the person a servant of God. That's the first stage of becoming a saint, a servant of God, Mr. Cummings. Yes. If the investigation goes well, like, you don't find any heresies in the person's writings, or, the person's like, you read the person's diary and she's like, I really don't believe in God, but they all think I do, so I'll act like I do. Okay. Maybe a very good person still, a nice person. Atheists can be good, nice people, but not someone that should be recognized as a saint. That's someone who's in heaven, a place maybe they didn't believe in. Okay? So if everything goes fine, no shenanigans or skeletons in the closet, you can recognize the person as venerable. Which means simply they're able to be honored officially in the church. People can have devotion to them. They're legitimate people, examples of holiness, of goodness, that, they're legitimate, possibly saints, possibly, but they were certainly good and holy, righteous people. Yes, Ms. Miller.
Isn't that part of like
Yes, it is. You've just entered into the third stage. Yes. Once a person is declared venerable, able to be venerated, you're waiting for a miracle. You're waiting for some kind of supernatural sign that the person is in heaven with God. And if that happens, if you get usually it's a healing or something. That's usually what they're looking for. Something that cannot be explained by materialistic, physicalistic, natural means. It seems to be clearly something beyond the realm of the natural. It's supernatural. It seemed, and it was invoked of God. It can't just be something that, might be weird, but might naturally occur. Things can naturally occur all the time that are weird, that we can't explain. Doesn't mean it comes from God or anything. But if God is involved, like people were praying to the Blessed Virgin Mary or praying to this saint, that's usually the indicator. Praying specifically to this holy person. Venerable so-and-so, please heal my daughter has cancer and it's terminal. There's nothing that the doctors can do with it because it's the stage it's in. And then the cancer's gone. Just one day she wakes up and it's gone. It's disappeared. which is not normal for cancer. I mean, cancer can get smaller. Well, never really goes away, but it's always kind of there. That's why you need continuing treatment. But, if it's just completely gone, which is not normal and not natural, and this happened, it's exactly what you asked of this saint so-and-so to do for you, that's an indicator. That could be an indicator. And the person will be declared blessed. They'll be beatified. That's a good indicator. It's evidence. Still doesn't make him a saint yet, but it's evidence. D10. So you need to consult with doctors and people like that and scientists and say, church in the investigation has to ask, are there any natural causes for this? Is there any natural explanation for how X could have happened to this person? And if it comes up, no, we have absolutely, this is beyond science. Okay, that's an indicator. If it happens, then you're waiting for a second miracle. You want further confirmation. Some may say you're testing the Lord, but but one miracle really isn't good enough because, I don't know, maybe you could get it wrong. I don't know. But the thinking is two is better than one, Two is always better than one, 2 ice cream cones in each hand, is even better than one, Why look the way I did. And if that happens, if there is another miracle praying to blessed so-and-so for something else and something happens and that is taken as confirmation, it's accepted as confirmation, then finally the Pope will declare the person a saint. Holy simply means holy, as we'll find out. A holy person. The person can be publicly venerated in the church by the whole church. The person is a reliable example of holiness. As we'll learn later when we talk about saints, that does not mean the person lives a perfect life or believes everything perfectly, knows everything. It's not that at all. You might just say they're perfectly human. They're perfectly in love with God, even if they have baggage, which, some Native American groups thought that Junipero had baggage, right? He didn't maybe necessarily treat Native Americans as respectfully as he should have, or we would have, yeah.
So would people just find somebody and be like, I'm afraid of this person? Like, how does that work?
People can do that. Usually a person has to have a reputation. I mean, if they just start doing it for no reason, I'm not going to say it's never happened, but it's not the normal way. Usually there's a reputation that develops around the person, either while they're living or after they've died. Sometimes weird things start happening, like miracles start happening at the person's grave site when people visit it or stuff like that. And so that at least gets the antennae out to the church. They say, okay, we need to investigate this, or someone puts it before the church. Sometimes the investigations come to nothing. They're like, oh yeah, all that weird stuff that was happening at the, the person's grave because there was a gas line break. And people were hallucinating, or that's why people were falling over dead, They really were dead. They were sucking in gas. Nothing miraculous there. So no, maybe a good holy person in the grave. Yes, still. Hopefully with God, we hope, but not a saint, or not miraculous at least. So yeah, you can't just pull someone out of a hat and say, I want this person to be a saint. Sometimes you can. I'm not so sure. I used to be a Knight of Columbus, and I'm not so sure they didn't pull Father Michael McGivney out of their hat because he just founded the Knights of Columbus. But the church says he's a holy man, so okay. Or Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, was revered as a saint in the Eastern churches. And my church was a big feast day for Saint Constantine, the Emperor, and equal to the apostles. The Roman Catholic Church, the Western Church, does not have him as a saint in their calendar. Probably because he was Emperor of the West, and they know where all his bodies are buried. Yeah, he wasn't the most saintly man. Here's Franco Zamora. Are you here? Did you come in? Is Franco Zamora, is she here? No. Okay. Mr. Rossley, okay. Ms. V is not here. Okay. Sources of authority. Well, how do you know? You want to know. You need an authority. The authority in this case would be, who's the authority deciding? The Pope, or more generally, because at the local level, you need, like, the local bishop has to be involved for the Pope. So what's it in general, we might say? Well, it's in general, Mr. Palumbo. In general, what do you think? What's a word for the general Christian community? Church, yeah. Yeah, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to fake you out. The church. There's an authority right there. People want to know. They're not sure. They think this person was holy, and you need an authority to describe it or to say that it's true. Okay. Let me, fortunately, I can't, well, I'll stop. Reason, intellect, will, choose, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Experience. Okay. It's talking about experience. Form of knowledge. The word is also a form of knowledge. Yes. And if we look at where it comes from, the word experior in Latin, to put something to the test. We are, the scientific method, it didn't come from a god. It's a human creation, and it exhibits what we as humans are like. You might say we're scientific, empirical beings. We like to test things. If I tell you that, I have a glass of water, and I put salt in it, and I say, oh, that's going to taste salty. All right, but just by looking at it, you don't know. But if you want to tell, take the glass and you take a little sip, right? And if it tastes salty, it's like, yeah, okay. If it doesn't, then you're like, there's no salt in there. I don't taste any salt. That's experiment. You just conducted an experiment. You have a hypothesis that the water has salt, that I put salt in the water, so now it's diffused and it's all salty water now. And you want to prove it. So how do you prove it? Are you cold? Well, what, do you want to move over? Okay. All right. And to prove it, you do something experiential. In your case, it's directly experience. Taste the water. Okay, but that's what scientists are doing in their laboratories. They need direct experience. They need to be able to say, I was there when we conducted the experiment. This was the data we got. Unless he has interns or she has interns. Then you let the interns do all the hard work and you just put your name on the article and get all the glory for it. But experience, putting something to the test, a form of knowledge where we observe, participate in an event and activity, and then you can say, I know this now. I have better knowledge of it, not just maybe theoretical knowledge. And as I said, and I'll emphasize, it's not an infallible guide, but reason's not an infallible guide either, nor is faith. None of these things are infallible, meaning they can't make mistakes. Oops, one second. And I'm presuming that's okay, right? Is it okay to make mistakes? You think so? Why not? I don't know if put out a vaccine that causes blood clots in people's legs, so it could maybe possibly harm them. I don't know.
That's that word comes in.
Experience? Now you know, right? Now you know that if we tested this vaccine, we rushed it out because people needed it, and it causes certain health effects that we didn't foresee, some of them which might be dangerous, but now from our experience, we know. Don't tell me who you are. It's almost right there. Ashley, but I know it's Abraham Bellamere. I got to reverse the thing because Ashley, I know, but Abraham is also a name, so got my brain is. But okay, Ms. Abraham Bellamere. However, Ms. Abraham Bellamere, do you really have to hurt people to find that out? Why not? That's what happened. Is that a good thing that, in the process of finding out, say, more knowledge about something, whether this vaccine works or not, that you'll allow for a certain percentage to be harmed by it to gain that experience? Why not? That's what you said, right? Why not? Right? Why not, Mr. Gaffney? I'm not taking that. It's untested. All right, all right. La da 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 dee, da 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 da. Experience, not an infallible guide, but nothing really is, not even scientific method. We can't, because it can't predict what might happen. It can predict what happens in a controlled environment, but not necessarily once you get it out of that environment, what might happen. You again, you need the experience. That's why you do further testing, right? Which you start using, you get animals or people to take the drug or the vaccine for you, Ms. Hoy, to see if there might be any effects. And you know this because you see all these drug commercials on television, and it always usually ends in the same place. It may cause death in some limited cases. In the unlikely event of that might it cause some serious problems for people, suicidal thoughts and death. Oh, okay. Just so you know. But we're willing to accept that. You're still willing to take Wegovy, Mr. Cummings, to lose weight, maybe, as long as you know that, okay, they told me that's a possibility. Not a high possibility, but experience. All right. The First Vatican Council, which was held from 1869 to 1870 in Rome, technically Vatican City, but I'll say Rome just for the sake of simplicity. Yes, it was a council held back in the late 1800s, held at the Vatican, in Vatican City, which is also called the Vatican because it's built on a hill, a number of hills in Rome. One of them is called the Vaticanum, and on the Vaticanum, they built a church to the apostles Peter and Paul, where the Pope doesn't live there. It's actually not, well, he does live there, but it's not, the St. Peter's Basilica is not truly the Pope's church. It's on another hill, in another place in Rome. But all the offices of the Pope, yes, God bless you, Ms. Robbins, were built there, and the offices are there, and the church to St. Peter is there. So on Vatican Hill, so it's commonly called the Vatican. And they held a council in that church of St. Peter's in the late 1800s. So it's called Vatican. And it's the first time it happened. Hence, Ms. I know who you are. Cottrell. Ms. Cottrell. In the back. That's not what I was looking for. Oh, I see who you are. Okay, I'll get you later. Ms. Cottrell, hence it's the First Vatican Council. Vatican I for short. Okay. It's an ecumenical council. I told you before we learned what that word means. Ecumenical simply means universal. Universal, that's all it means. Doesn't necessarily have a religious meaning to it, but it's a universal council, which means that all the bishops of the Catholic Church, as many who could attend, did attend at the time. So it's universal. It includes all of the bishops of the church, and hence it's an ecumenical council. To truly be an ecumenical council, at least for the Roman Church, it has to have been convoked by the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, as we call him. Okay, and it was convoked by this dude, Pope Blessed Pius IX. See his dates. This reads Regnat, when we reigned as Pope, not how old he was. Obviously, he's a lot older than this. But he was Pope for a long time, though, 1846 and 78. Pius IX. Who's Pius IX? Can you see it now? Is it okay? You with me? Okay. Yes, please.
Was he like the first ever pope?
No, he was, been over maybe 230, 40 popes before him.
popes for like the last 2,000 or so years.
Yeah, no, he's not the first pope. Apparently, he's not the last. We have another one right now. Who is Pope Francis? Close? No, you know too much, sir. What?
I'm from Chicago.
Yes, the Pope is from Chicago. Yes and no. Actually, Francis is also from the Americas, Argentina. But Francis is dead now. He's been arrested. Mr. Daphne? Mr. Daphne, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Research is showing again. Robert Francis Prevost.
Prevost, so. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hinkle. That take, popes take like a name, you know, like Madonna was not born Madonna, right? Lady Gaga, her name really isn't Lady Gaga, you know?
I got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Your brain told you?
Yes.
Well, it's like Leo.
Go ahead, sir.
Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah, what's that mean? Excited. Well, no, it's right. They are letters. They are letters.
I don't know. Roman numerals.
Yeah. Yeah, so people used to count with letters in the ancient world. What does X mean in Roman numerals? 10. What does I mean? What does V mean? So 10 plus 1 plus 5. Actually, 1 before 5, I should say. What comes before 5? The Lord had to go back. So Pope Leo the 14th, Mr. Gaffney, which means there have been 13 other Leos before him. Okay? So he took the name, his name is Robert Prevost from Chicago. But now he's Pope Leo the 14th. This is Pope Pius the 9th, which means there were 8 Piuses, one might say, before him. Okay? Blessed. I don't think he'll ever become a saint. Why? Because there's a little too much of an anti-Semite. He did not have good relations with the Roman Jews. So the Jews don't like him. So he'll probably stay a blessed forever. But despite that little bit of prejudice, he seems to have been generally a good man, a very good man. And he's the one who convoked this council, got all the bishops together at Vatican I. And in the process of Vatican I, they issued a couple of documents. They were actually not able to complete the council because at the time, a war broke out between France and Prussia. Prussia, which was basically Prussia comprised Poland, parts of Germany. Okay, a large part of Central Europe was under the Prussian Empire, not Russian, Prussian with a P. And they went to war. And so, you know, the bishops were worried that the armies were going to invade Italy and come down to Rome. So the bishops all got scared and they left. So let's wrap this up and leave, you know? So they actually never formally ended the council. It wasn't until the 1960s that they had another Vatican Council, and the first thing they had to do was close the first one officially. But in the process of this council, they issued some statements. And one of them is what we're going to look at, the Dogmatic Constitution on the Catholic Faith, otherwise known as the Dei Filius. Yes, Dogmatic Constitution. Dogma means teaching. That's all it means. That's all it means, Mr. Tedeschi. No big mystery about it. Dogma. Teaching. A high level of teaching. Usually dogma is high level official teaching. Okay, authoritative teaching. It's not just a simple belief or something. And a constitution. We have a constitution, right? For our country. We have a paper document which constitutes what our government should look like. And that's, well, believe it or not, that's what the federal government, all of it, which is huge now, but wasn't then, is based on just this document of a few pages, parchment. Okay? but it constituted what would be the United States of America. Okay, the church can have documents like that as well, constitutions, things that tell you what constitutes the official teaching, the official authentic belief of the church. It's a commitment. We're committed to this view. Not an opinion or a what if, or we think maybe. It's no. To be truly of the Catholic faith, you have to believe this as well. It's not like an infallible statement, but it's whatever. But it's a dogmatic. So a dogmatic constitution comes at the highest level of authority. We hope, okay? At least that's what I'm going to go with. That's what I'm going to teach. Dogmatic constitution. There are, councils issue other documents like decrees and declarations that are on lower messages that are lower levels of authority. But if something says it's a dogmatic constitution, then your ears need to perk up because then it's meant to be important. This one was generally called on the Catholic faith, but really it's dealing more specifically with faith, the relationship between belief and reason. And it's called Dei Filius because, it's written in Latin, and there's a reason for that, not just traditional stuff, convention, but also to have one unifying language which translations can be made. It's better to have, the church decided it was easier to keep this ancient language as its traditional language. And then, people could translate from it. Which they had chosen Esperanto, but not such a complicated language as Latin, but nevertheless, there it is. So a lot of times, instead of using the full title, which can be long sometimes, you usually just cite the first two Latin words of the text. So Dei Filius, Dei Verbum, Lumen Gentium. You'll get the principle as we move on in the course. So I'll call it the dogmatic constitution of the Catholic faith, but I'll also, in shorthand, refer to it as Dei Filius, Son of God in Latin, the Son of God, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So what is it? It's a statement of very high authority, and basically, the reason they felt that they needed to issue this document, because this is the late 1800s. You had about 200 years now of modern science and modern developments, and not just in science, but in philosophy and human arts and stuff like that. And there were some questions about the relationship between religion and truth, religion and modern discoveries and stuff like that. Could we know any truth at all? Even with science, can we know any truth? But certainly, can we know religious truths as well? So the church wanted to address this and basically stake its claim and say, no, we accept the presence of human reason is to search for the truth. And if there's truth, then God is present in that because we believe God is truthful. We hope. You never know. Because you can't know. There are religions where there are gods who lie, as well as gods who are truthful. How do you know? Why should God be truthful? What about the nature of a God means that a God should be truthful? To tell you the truth. Why can't a God lie to you? But no, from the Catholic perspective, God is truth itself, the source of truth. And so human reason is always striving after what the world really is. That's just truth. Okay, what is the world really like? Say authenticity. And when I find the truth, I have this feeling that I should believe in it, whatever it is. So reason and faith are not opposed to each other. We have both of them at work in our brains, if that's where you want to locate everything, just in the brain matter. Okay, fine. If you don't believe in a soul. But they seem to both be there and there's an interplay between them. We reason about things, but our reason can only go so far. At some point, we have to trust something, even if we're trusting our reason. I have reasons for believing this, that there's no God. Yeah, but you got to trust them. Or I have reasons for believing that I'm existing on the surface of a planet that's orbiting a star, that's also orbiting a black hole in a galaxy. It's also orbiting the whole sorts of other stuff, going where we don't know, but everything in the whole cosmos seems to be moving in one direction. Call it the Great Attractor. We have no idea what it is, but everything, every galaxy, not just us, but every galaxy that we can see is moving in this one direction towards the Great Attractor. We don't know what it is. It's the only part of the universe, because we can only see actually from our positioning in our galaxy. It's only possible for us to see about 80% of what's out there. There's 20% that we just cannot possibly, unless we pluck ourselves up and go to some other part of the galaxy or something, change our view. Which ain't gonna happen, Mr. Hinkle, not anytime soon. There's 20% that we just can never, ever see from our vantage point. Guess where the Great Attractor is located? Yeah, right there. Of course. Of course. All of a sudden, God's shy. God's camera shy. Yeah. Don't look at me. If it's God, we don't know. But anyways, trust. I trust that these things are all true because I've never seen them. I've never been on a spaceship or gone into space to see these things there. I see them all moving around and stuff. Can only really see one galaxy, not our own. Well, we can see our galaxy, parts of it across the night sky. You can see the Andromeda galaxy approaching us and stuff like that, but we can't really see any other galaxies. So, I trust my reason. I have reasons for believing these things, and I trust them. There's an interplay. Hopefully they're not opposed. They go together. And if reason is looking for truth and wants to believe in the truth, faith, they shouldn't contradict each other. When there's a contradiction, that's where the question comes in, If I believe that I'm just on some flat rotating disk that we call Earth, but there really is no galaxy. The stars are just things above us, as we're rotating around. We're on a flat Earth or something like that, which really wouldn't be flat just from physics of things. If something rotates fast enough, it actually curls up into a sphere anyway. So you still end up with a globe. But okay, fine. But, not a cosmos as we understand it, with galaxies and stuff like that. But, you have to start explaining contradictions in your idea, your theory. Like, how do satellites work? Satellites are predicated on the fact that the Earth is a globe in a solar system, and the satellites are flying around and bouncing signals off the globe. And how do you explain airplanes? If an airplane flies to the west far enough and it reaches the edge of the disk, what happens? Is it like an Einsteinian mystery where all of a sudden you come back to the beginning, in some sci-fi movie, whenever you reach the end of the universe, you reach the beginning again, Ooh, how does that happen? I don't know. But contradictions. So then the contradictions tell me that maybe my reasoning, which might be, that's good to reason, but my reason is faulty. I haven't arrived at the truth. Maybe not fully, maybe a little bit, but maybe not totally. So the church had to affirm this because, on the one hand, you had the modern scientists in the 1800s who were very anti-religious. I mean, a lot of them were. They were very anti-religion. Religion can give us nothing. Faith is worthless because it's something that's based not on evidence. That's what the difference. Science has evidence and data, and faith, belief, i.e. religion, is intrinsically based on things that are non-falsifiable, no evidence for them. So, but you had a counter reaction amongst some religious people, usually Christians, who said, well, we don't need science anyways. Just because if there's a God and God is pure ultimate truth, then anything he tells us is true. And that should be the source of all of our activity and knowledge and stuff like that. So you don't need human reason. Reason is, you make the leap of faith. You jump into the abyss of faith, of just simply believing, okay? Because God says so, or because it's the supernatural or whatever. That's the ultimate real truth. And reason just be set aside, because reason is imperfect. Human reason is imperfect, yes. if it's part of us, because we're imperfect. Last time I checked, I was broken, right? I'm broken. I don't work the way I'm supposed to. And as you get older, you all in this classroom are on the you're on the upswing of maturity. You'll reach maturity around your mid to late 20s. But I hate to tell you, after your mid to late 20s, it's all decline and then death. That's it. From the late 20s until whenever you die. The body starts shutting down in certain areas, little by little. You'll notice immediately, but you're losing a few bits of hair here or wrinkles there, or you find it's harder to get the fat off than it was. You can't exercise as hard as you could. Your sex drive, you don't have sex as much as you might have wanted to. Your sex drive goes away. Not go away, I shouldn't say it goes away, but lessens. All sorts of things. So why should, and if the brain can go, I mean, the brain, you can get dementia. So it doesn't matter. You could have had like 3 PhDs in physics over your life, genius, genius upon genius upon genius, 3 PhDs. And the guy gets dementia when he's like 60 and can't remember his own name. So why rely on reason, the brain? Just rely on God. You don't have to worry about that with God. So the church is saying no to both of these options. The church, in the dogmatic constitution, it says no. Truth is truth, even if it's religious truth, just because it's not proven by science, or in some cases cannot be proved. It's outside the purview of human science. But on the other hand, reason is given to us by God, and reason is good as well. And it's not just a leap of faith. It's not just believe, period. We are supposed to also think about what we're supposed to believe, or what we do believe, so that we can make choices based on those beliefs. Where am I here? Oh, here we are. Who would like to read this? This is from chapter 2 of Dei Filius. What does it say? What did the bishops of Vatican I say? Who would like to read this? Ms. Walker.
Let's see.
That have been made. So basically the upshot is we can know God by using our reason and studying the physical world as well, even though God is not by definition, at least from a Christian and Jewish perspective and Muslim perspective, physical, he's spiritual. We'd like to read this follow-up to that. Well, actually, let me talk about this first, because this is about divine revelation. That's another question. Okay? So natural reason, it is possible to know supernatural things through natural reason just by, looking at our world. Just looking at the data, looking at evidence, looking at data. And you can reason to say God's existence, precisely on that. Doesn't mean you're a Christian or a Jew or whatever, or even make you religious, but you can reason and know something about God. It is possible. It's not impossible with human reason. Human reason has a purpose. Okay. This was an important point to make, because as I said, there were some people who were denying the power of human reason. And even today you get that, but from a different direction. People in the 1800s were coming at it from the direction of religious people reacting against modern science. But now you got postmodernism, where they're the ones attacking science. People, they're not religious necessarily, postmodernists. But there is no truth. All truth is a construction of our mind, even the natural sciences. So, the science is great, but you can't really know anything. Okay, because every truth is simply a construction that we make in our own minds, based on our culture, our environment, whatever. No, reason is real. It affirms the reality of human reason and its benefit. It's if there's a God, and this has been, part of us as created beings, meaning the Creator himself willed that we have this, then we assume it's a benefit. It seems to be a benefit. Okay. But why, if we have human reason and people can reason about the supernatural, say, on their own, and people do, that's why you have many religions, I would imagine. People come up with different reasonings. What do you need divine revelation for at all? And I'll do this. The question is, why do we need God to reveal anything then? If it is possible, we have this tool in our brains, in our intellects, to reason to the answer anyway. Well, we'll eventually get to it. It may take us a few thousand years, but figure it out, right? if reason works. Why do we need more? Why does God have to intrude himself? Uncover himself, try to reveal things to us. Well, there are some things beyond the scope of human reason. I can reason to the existence of a God. And people have. As I said, that doesn't necessarily make them religious or Christian or any sort of religion. There are people who just believe that there's a God, but they're not religious, they're spiritual. Is that God good, Miss Hoy? Can I reason to that? Can I know that through my human reason? If there is a God, a supreme cause of existence for everything, we'll just call it God. Call it. Is it just in, first, I guess the question, is it an it? Is it a person? Is it relatable? How do we know? How can I reason that? I don't know. Did you try to reason it? No, you don't think so? No. How do I know that it's good? What are its attributes? Can I know its attributes? Is it a good thing? Is God good? Is he truthful? You think so? Why? Oh, it says it in a book. You have a special book that you refer to. And it says God is specifically good, right? Read the Bible. I mean, I'm just saying, because like the book of Judges, like Joshua, when the Lord's saying, huh?
I've read it.
Oh, yeah. So he can have some bad days, right? Where he's telling people to kill other people. No, he doesn't do that. He doesn't tell Joshua that when you go into the promised land, you are to wipe out all the Canaanites, pull down their altars, take their homes and their vineyards. They are yours now. God doesn't ask Abraham to sacrifice his only son to him.
Yes.
He does. That's the thing.
But he did it to question his faith. Not because he wanted him to kill, the son.
So he's being deceptive. God was being deceptive. I'm not really going to have him kill his son, but I'm going to give him this command. Kill your child! Let him think that that's really what I want him to do, right? Okay, so God is not, violent maybe, but he can be deceptive, right? If there's a God, he can lie to people.
I wouldn't say lie, but he tests people.
Test people. Why?
Because if you're saying he's gonna make you next question to make you.
So you always have to prove yourself to God.
Yeah.
Otherwise, prove yourself.
Because you can say one thing and one.
Okay. I don't know. You got a parent like that who's like, you're my child, but you always have to prove yourself to me, You always have to bring home an A. Why didn't you bring home an A? B+ is not good enough. You have to show me you're a good son or daughter.
That can be good or bad.
Okay, yeah, maybe. can push the person to do better, not settle. So how would you reason to the, well, you can read a book, but, okay, the book is still telling you that God is good. You're not arriving there at your own reason. It's still an act of faith in a way, just to show you're just trusting that the book is accurate about God. But I'm talking about reason. How would you reason if there were a God, that a God should be all-powerful, truthful, good, omnipresent? How do you know these things? The reason. Not through a certain book, some Bible, Quran. How do you know? Do you think about these things yourself? Or you just assume them? Why, you know? This Lacey, that is okay. But it still comes, okay, but faith is, okay, yeah, faith is also, you know, the movement of the intellect, true. You accept the proposition that God is good or he is all these things. How do you know that you're not just making it up because that's what you want God to do? Well, let's do what we do with the existence of God. I mean, Dave Fielder says we can know about the existence of God through consideration of the natural world, you know, and philosophy. You know, philosophers can talk about the world as contingent. Nothing seems to exist in and of itself. It seems to come from somewhere else. So where is that somewhere? And is that somewhere also a someone? You know, so we can ask those questions. Some people say no. The world just is what it is with no real source, no purpose. Others would say no, it does have a purpose. It's been created by something else. But if you do believe in a God, I mean, look at the evidence. His fingerprints are all over the place, right?
Everything about God is in the Bible,
Everything about God's in the Bible?
to my knowledge.
To your knowledge.
That you
Everything's
need to know
about
about Him.
Huh?
That you need to know about Him.
Okay, so you qualify it. That you need to know about God. Okay. So we know one thing about God. There's no self-esteem. Because he needs you to keep proving yourself. Show me you love me, show me you love me, show me you really believe in me. Why did God need that? Why would God care? I believe in him or not.
Why?
God. Oh, my goodness. What does God need reassurance? Do you think God needs reassurance?
I wouldn't say He needs reassurance, but you can say, like, for example, I can say that I'm a woman of God and I'm talking crap about her, because that doesn't align with God.
We're seeing the market. Okay. Well, let's look at the world. I mean, how is the world organized? I mean, I mentioned before, you know, cancer, right? You have tumor cells and stuff like that, and they grow in a person and cause death, right? Before they cause death, they cause suffering, right? So what does that tell us about God? Is he good? Still good? But he does like to cause pain and suffering sometimes?
Imagine if we didn't have pain and suffering. It would have been too easy.
Really?
Yes.
Too easy for what?
To not be. You wouldn't value certain things. It's too easy.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay. Unfortunately, but philosophically, if you think about it, what can you do with that kind of statement? Because obviously, but if you just had good, well, obviously you would know it's good, you know? You know what I'm saying? You say you need like this, you need something that's not good, like the anti-good, so that now you'll recognize what's good. You can't just recognize good as good. It wouldn't be good anymore? So if there's no pleasure without pain, so you gotta throw some pain in there. So, oh yeah, I recognize that this is pleasurable. I like it. Just asking. A volcano erupts, spews hot lava all over a bunch of people living at the bottom. Good God? Good God? Who made that thing? It's doing what it's supposed to do, right? It's a volcano, right? You know, the pressure builds up in the crust and it pushes hot molten rock up through the volcano. It's just physics, right? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? But if you believe in a God who created it, why would you create something like that that could be so destructive to other life? Would you, if you were a God?
I think it's like more complicated than that because like God created everything to be perfect, and then once we put into the world, we're not good people, and we have the choice to choose him, not choose him. Right? If we wanted everything to be good, that do all things are lots who love him. But the point is, he wants us to love him on two dimensions. And there's a lot of stuff that's bad because we're all bad and sinful. So the world isn't going to be good if we're not all.
Okay. So that, I mean, okay. So your point is, again, about the,
To what question?
oh, well, good, I was talking about volcano, but, you know, good, did a good God design volcano? You could say, yeah, it's exactly the way it's supposed to, it's a Russian engineer, that's what he wanted to do.
I would say that like in the beginning before sin and everything, got messed up, everything was created perfectly. And that would have been finding, I don't know if it would have erupted before, I don't know who planned that will make the river.
Okay, but how do you know things got messed up though?
This is
Oh, we're back to this book.
That's the explanation.
This book again.
I think Adam and Eve messed it up for other ones.
Really? How did
Can I
it
ask you a
mess up?
question?
Is.
Does even F's to your student make sure that you professor?
Huh?
Does even F's?
Maybe, yeah. Depends on it. If I might have to reflect. If I get enough people with F's, I have to reflect what happened, you know? Because I know the university's gonna ask what happened. Why did like so many
No,
people
why?
get F's?
No, it goes back to you. Why all your student got F's?
Yeah,
What are you not doing so they can get A's?
exactly, yeah. What can I do? Is that the same thing with God? I mean, this God,
Sometimes you have to like reflect and repent.
do you think God reflects on all those people that he sent to hell? We got the ultimate that.
They have the option to choose from the good and bad.
Oh, but it's their fault now.
It is their fault.
But it's not my student's fault if I have to give them an action. I can't help for myself with that thought. Maybe God does, you know. Chose to do it. Sorry, Bob. Eternity of hell. Yeah, how do you know things are messed up, Ms. Diaz-Lazo? Is that what you learn in, that's what you're gonna learn if you take like an astronomy class and you learn about the Big Bang and where are Adam and Eve in that story?
Things in your way.
Yeah, why is the universe bad? Made badly. We were there 14 billion, Adam and Eve were 14 billion years ago?
But
Because the physics aren't perfect. I mean, that's one of the weird things about the universe, is that, and physicists know this because this is funny. It's just like that the universe is off kilter in a way. It's not perfectly made, and if it were perfectly made, according to the theory, I'm not a physicist or an astrophysicist, but that's what they say, so I'll trust them. Life would not have developed. Galaxies would not have developed if it were perfect. But the universe is off just a little bit of imperfection. And that allowed galaxies and stars, and eventually, of course, us, life like us. So the universe, from the start of its emergence from this singularity we call the Big Bang, was already imperfect. It was already messed up by design. Does that tell you about God if there is a God?
I-
He's flawed.
Studying this is almost the same way that I believe the Bible or not my relationship.
True.
Think the people who studied it, and they can also be wrong, just like you were saying earlier, class can make mistakes and be wrong.
Okay.
So it's also,
All right, but that's kind of a slippery argument because to say, well, they can also be wrong. Yeah, we can all be wrong about, but I mean, come on. I mean, astrophysicists, I mean, they weren't there 14 billion years ago, but they're just looking at the data that's coming in through their telescopes. I mean, they're just looking at what's going, they're looking at how the universe is and how it seems to react and they could be wrong, you're right. They could be wrong. They could be wrong and the world is actually perfectly made, right? It's not imperfect. But then again, how can it be messed up? If it was perfectly made. We can mess it up.
I think when sin entered the world, things are as
God had no say in that. God made the world perfectly, and we who are apparently not gods were able to screw that up for him.
without me,
Okay, but still, human beings were able to screw that up for God. So is God all powerful then? If he can't stop us from intervening and screwing up all the universe, not just some of it, but all of it apparently.
And that's just like the whole point again, like he gave them a choice to follow what he said, like everything stay perfect or choose to do something different, and that's what led to everything. If he wanted to make everything perfect, keep it perfect, then we wouldn't have a choice.
Well, why would God do that? I mean, would you, if you had a child, would you give the child the choice to run into traffic or not? Or would you tell the child, don't do that? I'm not going to let you do that. Yeah. So you wouldn't try to grab the child if the child said, no, I am going to run out in front of traffic. Yeah, you just let the kid run out in front of traffic. Okay. At least we know where we stand, Ms. Diaz-Lazo. Yes, I see. I know. We're time. I'll see you next week. God bless you all. Have a good day, miss. Where did I stop? Revelation. You get much farther than Revelation. Yes. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, well, we had class, so just, the class is online on YouTube, so I would say have a good day, miss. Watch the YouTube course. Or, excuse me, watch what's on YouTube. I think it's uploaded. So you can take notes from that, so that's what you missed. You're welcome, miss. Have a good day. Yes. Have a good day. Thank you. Have a good day, sir. Hello, miss. Hello, miss. Mm. Well, I can do about that now. Back to this. Who's that?
It's
Oh, okay. Hello, Mr. Jastrzewski, Mr. Wojciechowski.
How you doing today, sir?
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Mr. Seraphin.
How you doing?
How's it going? Ms. I think I know.
Same bar. You know where the bathroom's at?
Huh?
You know where the bathroom's at up there?
There's a bathroom downstairs and there's a bathroom across the way on the other side of the building. Do-do-do-do, Column. No, where'd she go? Where'd she? It's Column. Training. Ackerlink. Sarah Fanning, Wojciechowski, Jastrzewski. That's the next day of the sun. Oh. Sounds Kelso. It's Kelso. Whoops.